get started. We'd like you to be a part of it, not the star of it. Okay, so we're going to continue in our study through the book of Ephesians, and we're at a very applicable part of great examples of application for one of our most visible and dramatic parts of our Christian journey on this earth. And so it kind of what sets us apart and makes us seem to the lost as a peculiar people, an odd people, something different. It draws their focus upon us, but in a positive way, because it's so unnatural as to the way we are walking when this aspect is manifested through us. And that's part of what light does. Light shines and exposes something that hasn't been seen or cannot be seen or is not seen clearly. So we're going to get into that area, and I'll tell you and remind you what that is. But it wasn't always that way. Before we were in Christ, and Christ in us, we were considered darkness. But now, once we accept Christ, that resurrected life, we are light. It's not that we're given light, we become light. We are light. It's part of our identity that is from the Lord. Now it's only natural that he asks us, since I have made you light, live like you, live like light, live like people of light. And let me explain a little bit about what that light will look like. It'll produce things that are good and right and true. So you know that this is a part of the reflection of our life journey, of our impact, of our testimony towards others that the world will see. And I'll even stop here and say, I know that there's a lot of people that say, I don't care what people think. Okay, but God does. And so he says, I'm going to give you everything you need so that when you live your life, see, people are going to think things anyway. So he just says that the things they think will be in the positive vein. And so it's not that we're always going to agree on things, and it's not that they're going to always appreciate what it is that we are reflecting, but he does say that I want you to show out of you, shine out of you, goodness, righteousness, and truth. So that's our calling because of who we are. That is a way we are to walk in the way of love, which is a heading. And so we see that as we walk in the way of love, it involves these different aspects, to be a thankful people, to not have certain things in our life because we want to be seen as someone that's different than the people of the world. So instead of participating in darkness, deeds of darkness, he says, be a person that reflects an attitude of gratitude. And if you can't find a lot of the circumstances to be thankful, just be thankful that I have made you light. You can start there. And then if you're going to live in eternity with me, hey, you got two things to be thankful for. If you realize and have learned that I'll never leave you or forsake you, well, how about that? Now you got three. And the list can go on. Some have even hit 6 and 7 things to be thankful for. If you need some more, just ask around. And so we're to live as children of light. And then part of that light is to reflect the wisdom of God, which we will gain as we grow in our knowledge of our Lord, who it is that lives in you. The first pastor that I came across that invited me to church as a believer said, doesn't it make sense that since you have accepted Christ, that you get to know who it is that you've given your life to? And that just made so much sense to a young man. And I said, yeah. And he says, so come and learn about who he is. And that's where we understand the wisdom and gain in the wisdom of God. To continue on there, he says, part of that light also is to submit to one another. Well, to submit to one another. That kind of makes sense when you think of the word of to submit. What do you think of before I tell you? Okay, that's coming up actually. Yield, defer, yeah, show an aspect of deference, putting the other person above yourself, that type of thing, to submit to one another. Now, because this is a strong word, in contextually, it had a stronger meaning, mainly because it's a military term. So we need to be careful, but it isn't only a military term. So we're to submit to one another. Now it's going to give us 7 examples there. We looked at, no, this is the one we're looking at today. And so the second of them, and it is to wives to submit to your husbands. But first it was to submit one to another, right, as brothers and sisters. The next one, wives submit to your husbands as is fitting to the Lord. One man bragged, my wife and I have a happy marriage. There's nothing I wouldn't do for her, and there's nothing she wouldn't do for me. And that's just how we've lived our married life, doing nothing for each other. They were so close, so close to this thing. Now, most of you husbands, and I will check your Bible, especially since you've already shown them to me, have this verse highlighted because, you like to highlight your Bibles. And so it's a happy verse for many men, but it's not something that they got it way out of whack if you have it highlighted. I'm just telling you, men, that you have it, you're way out of whack. And so my task today is to get you back in whack. And so it shouldn't be this verse that is highlighted. Any direction you can give me?
How about the one before?
Hey, there you go. This is the verse you need to highlight. So just draw an arrow from 22 to 21, and you can use whiteout to do whatever there, or just highlight this in a darker color so it stands out, so that you're a little more in whack to what the context is referring to. And so we are to submit one to another. That is the heading. Everything else are examples. Now, true, wives are separated as an example of how they are to submit, but guess what's coming up next? Husbands, you are to submit one to another. So be careful, guys, how strong you voice this verse, because guess what's coming up next? Your turn. So this is probably, I tried to work on it last week. I want to carry it into this week and next time as well, that we are consistent with this subheading, these examples of the one heading of submitting one to another. Now, one to another doesn't just mean Christian brothers and sisters. It means, in this case, husbands and wives submitting one to another. It'll go on. Children and parents submitting one to another. Employees, employers submitting one to another. So it is part of this process. So we don't really have any stand here to circle this and say and use it as a beating club and all of that. Remember, the idea is under mutual submission. And again, even this morning, you're going to have to fight the temptation of just noting the responsibilities of the other person. And this I've seen in relationships that I have had to get involved in, not voluntarily, but I've had to get involved in, is they are so up, I'm so impressed with the Bible knowledge of the responsibilities that they have for their partners. And I'm thinking, if you just had a Bible study and shared with each other maybe. But this is so common. This is so common. You're going to have to fight the temptation here. And the mature believer will focus on the task assigned to you. and come to terms with the fact that you cannot be responsible for the decisions that other people make. And I'm not just, talking about the relationship roles in marriage here. This is going to affect all. That's true of all relationships. Husbands and wives, children and parents, employees, employers. We don't get the Bible and beat our employees as an employer and say, you need to do these things. Instead, we need to get the Bible, embrace it, and set it as an employer. What do I need to do? I cannot be responsible for the decisions that other people make, but I can be responsible to yield to my responsibilities as you have laid them out. So under the heading of submitting one to another, there are these roles, and then you determine which apply to you, and just focus on yours and do your part, do them diligently and consistently, and that's a great place to begin. Now, my objective going through this dynamic of husbands and wives is not to troubleshoot marital problems and get into all the details of husbands and wives and those dynamics, as much as it'll be to try to just stay on track, stay on task of the outworking of being filled or controlled as we submit one to another, this mutual submission. Now, it will involve where we have to discuss some roles and issues of each of them, but my main focus is going to be here. So don't be concerned if I don't get into your issue or your struggle in your relationship. That's not this part of what I want to do here. So ready? We're going to get going here. So there's 12 verses. We're not going to get through them today, but there are 12 verses over the weeks that we'll look at. And what seems to be dealing with the marriage relationship. Now, I want to point out a couple of very interesting things. One is, out of these 12 verses, 2 of them are going to be focused on the wife. 10 of them are going to be focused on the men, the husbands. So, which may seem to imply to me that either men need a lot more detail or there's a lot more responsibility. I'll let you decide as we unfold this. But right away, we get into this verse. Wives, submit to your husbands. I don't have to ask, and I'm not going to look around, but I know just by hearing those words, there's a knee-jerk reaction, there's a tightness, there's a closure of the ears, there's a tenseness, your blood pressure goes up, and that's just the guys, thinking, oh man, lay it on her, preacher. And so I want to share something with you that I want to be sure you both understand. Are you ready? And this is just due diligence. Check me out. It's not a secret. It's not my thoughts. Wives, submit to your husbands. Guess what word is actually not in the original? Submit. What? All these years we've been married and I've been submitting to this guy and it's not even in the Word of God, and it's not. The actual reads, wives to your own husbands as to the Lord. Now, Mary, language arts teacher for, 70 years, about, from the beginning. So here it's called, and I don't know about the English language. I was absent that day. I know a lot more about the Greek than English. And so here I don't know, is there a genitive case in English? Oh, okay. Well, there is in the Greek. And a genitive case is simply where there's a primary noun. I don't want to get all boring. Not that it's boring to teach language, it's not. But I think it's exciting. In the language I'm a little more familiar with, yes. English is my third language, so I understand. It's sarcasm is my first, but so there's something called a genitive case, and then what it does is it just points out the primary noun in the sentence structure, and then once you have the primary noun, which in this case is an example, is love, then it's, as it's referred to with the pronouns, it is referring, going back to that same one. So it doesn't have to continue to say the person's name or what it is, the place. And and that's called the genitive case. And I usually put it as like, if there's a list of things, then as it refers to what's involved in that list of things to do or this person, characteristics about this person, you don't have to list their name. You know, Mary is wonderful, and Mary is smart, and Mary is this, and Mary is that. You just say she, right? So here's a good example. Love is patient and kind. That means that love is patient, love is kind. Love is not jealous, love is not boastful, love is not proud, love is not rude. So this is called a genitive case, where even though the noun is not involved in it, it's understood that it is carried over. Now, why have I said that? Because this is not a loophole. Actually, it says wives to your husband. It's in the genitive case where it goes back to what it is it's referred to previously. And it's to be submissive or to submit to one another. So it's wives, they were very right, the translators, to put that in. Just like they're going to, it would be very correct and accurate to put it where it says husbands. You can use the genitive case because it's all in the same list. To husbands, submit to, and we'll get into that next time. But here we're on 22. Wives to your husbands, genitive case, submit, so we're there. So it's almost a loophole, but not quite. Now, the word submit itself, like I mentioned, it's a military term. And it usually means, and this is important, Ray, you can verify this, please. For anyone in the military, you learn a chain of command, or you learn a sense of order or function, the necessity for function. And so here we see that it means to line up under, to arrange a troop or whatever it is under the command of a leader so that they're working as a functional unit to accomplish an end in an orderly manner. Now, that's when it's used as a military term. In the context, husbands and wives, are we talking about military? Please say no. Okay. Yeah. Well, the wars, mental war, and the battles we face. No, don't use the word. So it's good to know, and this is not me. This is just all, you know, you can look it up anywhere. In a non-military use, it was a, can you help me here? It's a big word. Voluntary attitude of deference. Now, Ray, I know it's been a while. You've been retired from the military, Lieutenant Colonel. I can just see you addressing the troops as a younger man there, and you say, I want you to give me, or how about this, just an easy one. Attention! If you want to. If you want to voluntarily do that, right? No, doesn't apply there. Military, no. But this is in a non-military context. So the word is now, it's a voluntary attitude of deference, a spirit of cooperation, and being responsible for you and your role and your reactions and actions. So that's more the context of what it is that we're doing. We're to submit one to another. We're to voluntarily take the attitude of deference when we are responding to one another. So none of this rule with an iron fist, it doesn't fit here. Well, I'm the chief and you're the, no, that doesn't fit here either. That's more military setting. And that's not what this is. The context is very clear. So again, not a loophole, but they are proper and correct in doing it. And although this is an imperative, it's in the imperative mood, notice it's in the middle voice. Middle voice, which means?
Throw a ball, catch it choice.
Yeah. Something is given towards you, and then you respond what you're gonna do with it. You're either gonna catch it or you're gonna let it fall, but the choice is yours. See? It's a voluntary action. You have a role in whether or not you're gonna participate in what's going on. But because it's middle voice, something is going on. And here it's submitting one to another. Are you going to middle voice and respond in that way? That's your call. It's your call. You can choose yes or no. But it's obviously saying this is a good thing to do. If the Lord is going to be leading you, He's going to be leading you to do this. So just something to know. There was a line of men standing in front of the pearly gates and waiting to get in, and an overhead sign was there. It says, "For men who have been dominated by their wives all of their military life." And the line extended as far as you could see. There was another sign that says, "For men who have never been dominated by their wives." Only one man stood in that line. St. Peter walks over to him and says, "What are you doing in this line?" The man says, "I don't know. My wife told me to stand here." I don't know what I'm doing. So it's not about this, command and all this stuff. Matter of fact, this doesn't mean that the husband can order around the wife and her responding to his every wish and command. Like, I need to say that. I know that doesn't sound like who works that way. Matter of fact, there is we'll see that the husband's primary responsibility as head of the household is to love and provide and protect and to serve his wife and family, and here's the wording, not to lord it over them according to his personal whims and desires, right? Or be harsh or mean or dictatorial. Matter of fact, there is a Latin phrase for men that are like that. And the best translation in English that I could put is cheap studio apartment. Probably the best translation in English for that. For those that like to feel that they have that right to be this way in a marriage. Not going to work. So the big key is context here, and taking place for this aspect, taking place in the marriage in the proper way that's going to be God honored. And we're going to see that context is to submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Now that's the verse in the heading. Can you tell me or can you show me here where it says if the person is deserving? Can you see the anywhere in there where it says qualifies it and say out of submit one to another if they're good to me? No, it's not there. So this is important. This is the motive for our submitting one to another, because this is pleasing to my Lord. Has nothing to do with whether or not the person is deserving of it, and this falls into any relationship that we will get into here. But in this particular case, we're looking at the relationship of husband and wife. Verse 23, again, context, is a little more of an explanation for motive. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church, his body, of which he is the Savior. Now, again, that may seem a little heavy when you read that, but this is also given as an explanation to why this ought to take place, why wives are called to submit to their husbands. This is a big verse, by the way, for us men, us husbands, because the more this is true in our role as husbands, the easier it will be for the wives to see the importance of function in their voluntary submission. Explain a little bit. First, guys, let me say this. There's one little word, and you're the king of little words. One little word will focus us to be students of the Lord with a passion if we want this marriage to be a great thing. What is that word?
As.
There you go, Jerry. As. Because here it's saying, here it's giving a little motivation. Yeah, do it because it's pleasing and honoring to the Lord. But another reason that you want to do this as you look to that tangible person is he represents Christ, who's the head of the church. And so submit to him because he is like, the husband is the head of the wife, just as Christ is the head of the church. So there's a follow-up question here. Oh, is he now? Oh, is he now? And really, that's a question that us men need to answer. Because until we can figure out how Christ heads the church, guys, we will never get it right in the marriage. So the question we need to ask and answer is, how does the Lord head the church? By the way, who's the church? You. How is the Lord head of me? And we are his bride, right, guys? We are his bride. The church is his bride. So we would be wise to ask in the quietness of our hearts and minds, what is my bride seeing in me? Is it a reflection of how Christ is the head of me, the church? Does he rule me with a hard fist? Does he yell at me? Is he making me go to a place of fear? Is he using fear? Is he manipulating in that way? No, that's not the way the Lord works with us. So none of that should be a reflection of what my bride sees, as I am a reflection of the way Christ heads the church. Is that the way I am leading in this marriage? What makes you, as the bride of Christ, the church, want to submit to the Lord? What is your motivation? We've covered it for weeks. Anyone, please.
Love.
Love. Love is a great motivator. We mention that. I say it all the time. Love is a great motivator. It's one of the greatest motivators. And so here we're told that this is the key to us as husbands and this dynamic in this function in a marriage here. So we see that as the church submits to Christ, let's read this now. As the church, who's the church? Guys only. As the church, who's the church, guys? As the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit to their husbands. You see that comparison? You see how that's got a little bit of room to be either right or wrong because of this just as, so also. Now as, those are comparisons. And so this is a very important thing for us men to jump on, embrace, become students of, and then start to reflect this in our life and in our relationship. Because it's critical. It is an important role in how this thing is going to function out. And you know what I love about this verse? Many men like to quote this verse in counseling sessions. And what I love about it is it backfires every time they use it with me. Because the husband is a part of this church. So you know what I do? I take that verse that they quote and I put their name in it. All right, Joe Smith, just as you, Joe, submit to Christ. How are you doing in your submitting to Christ and everything? Just wondering. Well, that's the same way your wife should submit to you. And this is the look I usually get from him, and this is the look I usually see in the wife's side. And yeah, how are you doing there, Joe Smith, in that area? So always just save me a little bit of time and just try it. Put your name there. I'll wait. Kind of changes the expectation a bit of maybe what we are imposing on our wife as to the meaning of what this is and how it actually works out in our mind, how we think it should work out in our relationship. So just as we submit to Christ, wives also should submit to their husbands. Now, this isn't really given well, if they're doing it low, you do it low. If they're doing it wrong, you do it wrong. That's not the point of this comparison. The implication is that the husband is doing what he's supposed to be doing, that he is yielding to Christ. He is walking that walk of love in those areas before it got to submit one to another. And as that is taking place in his life, she is seeing his submission to the Lord, and she's saying, that's an example for me to get on and do the same thing. And that's a process. And it's not always gonna get at the same time. It's not always gonna be a perfect example or a jumping on board, but it is for the sake of unity and function. Remember back in chapter 4, there was a point of unity that we hit. And it says, Paul says, as prisoner for the Lord, I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you have received. This is going to be important. Again, that's the book. You don't read on the responsibility of the other person. You read on what are my responsibility? What is my responsibility? The one you've received. Be completely humble. There's the attitude of servitude. And gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another, meaning you will have to bear with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity, which implies there's going to take some effort, through the bond of peace. There is one body, one spirit, one hope, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father over all. So focus on the things we have in common, work through and put some effort to keep the peace and the things that we differ. And you know what? If we can't come to an immediate resolve, just continue to bear with one another and be gentle and patient and so forth. God will eventually bring them around. She says. Okay. So it is for the sake of unity, maintaining this oneness that we're called, which calls for order and requires specific roles and function. And because we cannot serve two masters without creating a disharmony and conflict, God sets in order, an atmosphere of a pattern whereby this dynamic will work. So God sets up, by the way, order and function, two of God's favorite things. Just look at the universe. Look at our bodies. God set up an order for the church. And when that order is not followed, the church will split. God sets up an order in the workplace. And when that order is not followed, people lose jobs. God sets up an order in the family unit. And when that order is not followed, there is rebellion and chaos. God sets up an order in marriage. And when that is not followed, there is misery and brokenness. It's just a matter of order and function to make it successful. We all understand that in so many different areas. The laws of the land, there are certain laws. I think of that every time I'm driving. You know, those little white lines, right, are lanes. And I'm thinking, I am so dependent on other people, realizing that they need to stay between those two white lines, or I'm in trouble. And you know what? They're dependent on me doing the same thing. And it's difficult when you're eating and texting and shaving and doing all these things and touching up my hair. It's you know, it is. So it's a great responsibility. And so there's order and function, and we need to depend on one another to do our role. And I'm responsible for me, you're responsible for you, so that this whole thing can work and we can all get home safe. So we are to submit as unto the Lord, and to those we submit, whether in mutual submission, like husbands and wives voluntarily, or those in authority, like employers and government and so forth. Some may even inspire us, right? And make us want to, or make us feel that they are worthy of our respect. And of course, that would make it easier, a lot easier, to trust and cooperate with them. Easier, but it's not conditional upon us submitting one to another. Now, at this point, I usually get a flurry of hand raises or questions that come up and say, "Oh yeah, preacher, well." And I always get the strangest comments at this point, right? Because you're saying, you know, it's a matter of function. It's not, it doesn't mean that he's smarter with you. I mean, oh, I'm kidding. And that's never the case. And so it's, or that they're always right? And so it's not it. And then, but it is a part of the function of how things are to work. You go, well, yeah, well, here's what I get all the time, and I don't know why it's the go-to. What if he asked me to rob a bank? What do you say there? And I'm going, has he asked you to rob a bank? No, but you know, what if he did? Well, then you married an idiot. Why did you do that? That was your decision. All right. But what if, the what ifs, if and this applies, you know, any relationship we'll get into, what if they are thoughtless? What if they are inconsiderate? What if they're abusive? What if they're ungrateful? And they sometimes may be. Kids tell me about their parents, and employees tell me about their employers, and wives tell me about their husbands, and you know, all of these things. You know, what if he tells me to kick the dog, you know, or not file taxes, or I don't know, just there's everything. Man, I tell you, it's a mess. So the Spirit-led believer is reminded that we are not called to submit only when we like them or agree with them or it makes sense to us. We're reminded that if it's the Lord's will, that our compliance to submission is as unto the Lord. Now, I will say this, how beautiful it would be if both husband and wife are asked to individually submit to the Lord's lead, and therefore they are both seeking to obey their Lord. So if he tells her to submit to the husband, she is simply obeying the Lord. And if he tells the husband to respond to his wife in the way the Lord prescribes, then he will also be submitting to the will of the Lord. Now that has all the making of a very conducive relationship. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If they were doing that. I know my kids tell me that, you know, anything mom wants, dad goes out of his way to get it. She scares me. She doesn't scare me. She loves me. And because she loves me, and go figure, don't question it. I'm just saying, don't question it. You got a good thing going, I got a good thing going. Don't question it. Just say, she tells me she loves me, and I blush every time. And so it's like, why? Frank, it's like, I love you. Why? You know everything about me, and you still love me. What's up with that? You know, and Frank was sharing that with me earlier about his relationship with God. He just says, I can't get over that, how much he loves me. And the same thing is true. When you realize that, it just humbles you. And with that humility comes an attitude of how grateful we are and how much we realize that is grace, undeserving, but I'll accept it. But what does it do for my motivation? Oh, I wish I had something a little sweet to eat. I got my shoes on, I'm heading out the door. Why? She wants something a little sweet, you know? And so, Derek, who knows, whatever it is, you know, it's good for me. I'm good with that. Why? Because it's just a motivate. So this would apply to all relationships. Now, what if the husband and the Lord disagree? Rarely happens.
Whatever
Yeah, I know, sometimes. But in that once in a lifetime chance, what if the husband asks you to do something, or, you know, is encouraging you to participate in something that is obviously something that the Lord disagrees with? What am I to do then, preacher? Well, you got a couple options, because we always got a couple options. One, you can, the wife gets stuck in the middle. I get that. And this can be a conundrum in the relationship and on the part of the wife, obviously. Now, I've seen where the faith of the wife is so great, it's great enough, and what she's wrestling with is not that big of a deal regarding consequences, that she will say, you know what, you know this isn't the wisest thing to suggest, but since you're so insistent, by faith, because I serve a higher power. Come on, real, look at me. I serve a higher power. And you know, it may be that the Lord called me to submit to such an idiotic thing, because he could probably teach you something a lot deeper and more impactful than I can. So when I do it, all of a sudden it's nagging. But when he teaches, it's insight, a life lesson. So you know what I'm going to do on this one, because I feel the Lord is leading me, calling on me to team teach you. And my faith is big enough in God that I'm going to go ahead and comply. And then I'll just stand there and see how the Lord wants to teach you. Yeah. And you know, I may get a little impact on that, little back, you know, flash on that. But and then sometimes it's for the benefit of others to watch, maybe our kids, to see that. Look at how intently Tim's looking there at Tony, you know, getting a lesson. And so it's like, my faith is big enough. Maybe yours is and has been in the past, and may be called upon to do it again. That's your call. But that's not the only option you have. You also have the option where we have to, like Peter said, when they were asked to do something that was against God's will, clearly. Oops, I didn't put the end of the parentheses there. I mean, quotes. And so it says we must obey. He says, you know what? I gotta obey God rather than man. So my consequences now come from any damage this relationship may have by me saying, by saying no. Are you? Nah, that's a crazy thing to do. I'm not going to do that. Why? Because that definitely crosses the line. Now it's going to hinder my. No. I'm just going to choose to obey God. But you should have been doing it. And if you were, you wouldn't have asked me to participate in such a thing. But like Peter, I'm going to take this stand and say, you know, I got to choose to believe to obey someone. I'm going to choose to obey God. And there you go. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's always a good go-to if the case need be. So, wife, submit to your husband. It's not what many teach or understand. It is a voluntary action for the sake of function. And we've got some great examples. And when the comparison is working right, it's a beautiful thing that you don't even think about submission. And we'll get into that next time, because husbands, next, you are called to submit to your wives. So be careful how you speak this week, because next time it may come around and say, yeah, you had your week. But it's a voluntary action out of reverence for the Lord, for the sake of function, for a bigger revelation, which we'll get to at the end of the chapter. So there's an overall purpose for this whole thing that we're going to be going through on submitting one to another. I kind of touched on it on the entrance, but we'll hit it definitely stronger at the end. Any questions at this time?